actually in key. You know this song, Alice?
Mm-mm.
This is the theme song to What Happened to Me Today. This is the theme song to ER.
Oh.
Where I was today for an emergency, and I had what a day I had. So first, because I've got an ingrown toenail, sorry everybody, if you're somebody prone to throwing up, thinking about things, this ain't good. I have bad looking feet when there's not an ingrown toenail. So anyway,
you have very cute feet, sweetie, like a hobbit.
Yeah. So anyway, so my big toe is like, you know, in fact, whatever, you don't want to know, but it's bothering my walking. So, and we can't figure it out. Alice has tried to help me get the thing out. I've tried to get it out. It's chew busted in there somewhere. And so then
it's
today,
not a pretty scene.
Right. And so yesterday,
I probably could get it out if I could like sedate you.
Right. So yesterday, Alice went to yesterday for some reason I was put back on lawn mowing duty, which is back in my plate, and I was mowing the lawn, and the toe was really bothering me. I was on an angle, etc., and then I had to plant some things, which we should water tonight too.
Okay.
And the toe is bad tonight as well. So then Alice, I asked her to help me try to get the thing out, and she spends like 30 minutes. I've never been in so much pain in my entire life. This was Civil War bone saw level pain with no anesthesia.
Not.
It was horrific. Alice, you weren't on the receiving end of it. It was, my throat got dry. You have not had anything. No,
I've had babies without an anesthetic. I know.
No, there is no childbirth that came anywhere
your
close
ingrown toe
to this surgery with blunt instruments.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so painful and just a total that I was afterwards. First of all, my toe became numb eventually because you just killed all the nerves. It's dead now. And then I'm lying there, and I'm like, I would been sweating, and then I felt this weird, peaceful feeling. It was I've never had so much pain at the hands of another human being. So this is definitely this is, like I said, Civil War era. So then we decide that maybe it's time I go see somebody. So we go to make an appointment at the In-N-Out clinic. The unpleasant person, a witch, who answered the phone, actually was the one who was there, who said, "Yeah, we do ingrown toenails." I go there. She goes, "Yeah," and I said, "Do you have masks, by the way? Because it's a mask place." And she points to them. And I said, "Oh, okay." And she said, "Your last name?" And I said, "No." She said, "What's your name?" I said, "Oh, it's Tom." And she said, "Okay, let's go." And I said, "Okay, yeah." She goes like this. In other words, go over to the next window. Doesn't say it, just points. She's a nasty person. If you're in the Greater Newburyport area, you know who I mean. Anyway, so I spent a few minutes with the witch. Then it's time, and I'm thinking here that what usually last time I was there in person, I had to show a beautiful young nurse. She had to hold my gout foot in her beautiful, once pure hand. I'm sure I ruined her. She is a ridiculous.
That's nothing to the time.
She looks like a salamander now.
That's nothing to the time early in COVID when you had to do telemedicine.
Let's not get me in trouble here.
And you had poison ivy in your eye.
Oh, yes, that's right.
You were on the telemedicine thing.
Yeah, that's right.
And there was a poor young woman on the other end.
She was also beautiful in the telemedicine
who had to look at your poison ivy face.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I got to look at her angelic, perfect face. She looked at my poison ivy face. Oh, it was perfect. Great. It was great. So I go into the area. Finally, after what seemed like about 11 hours, they call me in, and the woman says, "Okay." First of all, I had a problem with the guy. There was a guy who sat down next to me. They said, "Oh, he's getting some shots," and they're like, "Whoa, where are you going?" He said, "Tel Aviv," and he sat down there next to me, and they say, "Okay." After like 25 minutes, like, "Okay, Thomas." I said, "Oh yeah," and he says, "Yes," and I said, "Oh, I guess what Thomas?" And she said, "Walsh," and he said, "Yes, Walsh," as if he's got a problem with me now
for having the same name.
Since I tried to take his slot, so then he gets up. And he looks over at me, and I say, "Good luck in there." You know,
Why?
there's six acceptable waiting room quips you can make, right? And he goes, "No, thank you." And then I noticed he's left his glass case for glasses on the seat where he sat, which, by the way, said don't sit there because it's social distance. But he sat. I didn't say anything. I said, "Oh, you left your." He already doesn't like me. We've got a bad energy, and so I said, "You left your glass case." And he turns around, doesn't say thank you to me. He said, "Oh, and so I did," and goes and grabs it and goes in. So Thomas Walsh, you suck.
What?
So then it's my turn to go in, and the first nurse goes in, and she goes, "We got to do your blood pressure," and I say, "Okay, here we go." I know. I knew that there was a way that somehow me getting an ingrown toenail would end up with them working at me in the emergency room somewhere else. So here we go. They do the thing, an automatic thing, and she says, "Wow, it's really high. It's really high blood pressure." I said, "I know, it's really high. I know, I'm fat. It's high." She said, "You were on medicine. What happened? They stopped. They wouldn't give you my medicine anymore." So it's like,
well, yeah, the medicine thing, the blood pressure medicine thing is like a racket because they
well, hold on, that's coming.
Okay.
It's all coming. So she said, "Oh yeah, it's really high. It was like 180 something. It was over 102."
It was not an okay number.
It's such a bad number that she's asking. What was that noise, Alice?
What noise, honey?
Either you're cocking a 45 or opening a drink.
I'll let you guess.
Okay. So anyway, she's like, "Okay, are you seeing anything blurry right now? Are things tingling? Are you those like?" In other words, is the stroke still happening or has it already happened? She's the one. I said, "No, I'm fine. I'm fine. So then they go, "Okay, you're going to be seeing Joe today." And I said, "Oh, that's good. I'll see Joe today. This way I won't have my bloody stump sticking in another young, beautiful nurse's face who's got to touch it this time, even more so than last time." So I go into the room to wait for Joe. And the nurse says, "Okay, Joe will be in a minute." So I'm waiting there, just sitting there saying, "Very great." Another nurse bursts in and says, "Yeah, I just want to check that blood pressure again." It's like somebody sounded the general alarm at the nurse's station. They said, "Holy,
it was what?"
Yeah. So then she takes it, and it's down a little bit. It's 160. So it's still, you're absolutely dead, but not where they...
Well, that's what I remember. That's why I stopped taking your blood pressure at home with the cuff, because I was like, according to the chart, it says you're literally having a stroke right now. Right. And you were like, "I'm not going to go anywhere." And I was like, "Really?" Because it says you should contact the emergency room.
So anyway, so I'm like, "Oh, great." So she takes it, and she's like, "Oh, wow, whatever." So now I'm waiting on Joe to come in.
Mm-hmm.
A few minutes later, in bursts Joe. Boom. Joe is probably 30 years old, the finest looking gentleman I've ever seen in my life. The best. Somehow he's absolutely tanned. His scrubs fit perfectly. Maybe I shouldn't be noticing this stuff. Maybe I'm finding out more about myself today than I do.
Why is he working at the urgent care?
I don't know why. But Joe is the finest looking man on the face of the earth. And now I feel bad that this good looking man has to hold my... Alice, I would date this guy. I would.
Okay,
even though I'm not gay. Just because, for bragging rights of how good looking this person is that's on my arm. If something happened to you.
I'm getting a lot of insight into your soul right now.
I would,
go ahead,
absolutely.
continue.
So Joe, though, doesn't want to doesn't want to flirt with me. He comes in and he said, "What's going on with your blood pressure?" I'm like, I don't know, Joe, I'm fat. I don't know. I don't take care of myself. I've got a lot wrong with me. That's one of the reasons I'm trying to get my toe fixed here. He's like, "Oh my goodness, what happened? Where's your primary care? Are you not taking the lisinopril anymore? What happened?" So now we are way away from 1,000 miles away from a ingrown toenail. Well, Dr. McGorgeous is, really worrying about me now, which is one of the reasons I don't do things like this. So now Joe's very worried. He says, "Oh my goodness." He said, "We need to go to you need to get a primary care. You should get right back on that stuff." And he said, I said, "Well, I'm trying to exercise. I can exercise, right?" And he said, "No." So it's all bad news. I'm going to die, whatever. And I said, "Yeah, I had a place, and then COVID came, and I didn't go to the office, so they got mad at me, and they stopped giving my medicine." And he's like, "You need to do it right now." He said, "Oh, and also, we don't do toenails, just so you know." So I'm like, "Oh, great. Well, this has been great. Fantastic. All right, I'll drag my bloody stump out of here." And he says, "Don't worry about it, but I can give you some cream. It'll take care of, so it won't get infected," which they forgot to give me anyway. So it doesn't matter. And he goes, and as he's leaving, he goes, "Okay, so you got the list of primary care physicians, and I can give you podiatrist, right? Which is something I was hoping wouldn't be a thing in my life ever." So he gave me a list of that, and that's what I got for my time and money. I got to gaze at a handsome man, and got 2 pieces of paper, and then he said, "Okay, but make sure you make an appointment there." Like I get the feeling that they cleared the waiting room after I left and like huddled and said, "Guys, did everybody saw that for the record, right? Let's just all go to the captain's log here, mark down what happened." So anyway, so now I've got to go back to get the medicine that I always wanted to have. Right. I had no problem with it. It's lisinopril. It's fat guy. What's it called? It's fat guy. Blood pressure medicine.
Right.
So I don't scare the shit out of Joe and the rest of the gorgeous people at that place.
Well, and for the record, we've tried to fill it 1,000,000 times, but your doctor's office stopped letting you get it unless you went in, and we, for a period of time, did not have health insurance.
Right.
In between companies that you worked for, and so to pay the out-of-pocket cost for all the office visit and everything seemed crazy. So we kept asking them if they would just approve another refill on the prescription until you had a doctor again, and they wouldn't do it. Which seems nuts to me that, like, as a doctor who supposedly doesn't want people to die.
Right, and that's not the first one. I've done other doctors
But, like,
as well.
why? What's the risk of just taking the high blood pressure medication without going in there? What's going to happen if they just approve to fill the prescription again?
Like Rush Limbaugh.
What will happen to you if you keep taking blood pressure medication without going to talk to them?
I'll keep living.
I mean, but, like, what?
Right. Right. And so...
Okay, but now you have insurance. Now you can go back to the doctor's office.
But what a racket. It's like, just nobody's abusing lisinopril. You know, it does nothing whatsoever. You know, there's no hot. You don't feel it. There's nothing to it. And I can't even get my hands on black market lisinopril. Like Rush Limbaugh had 1,000 oxys coming in a day, and I can't get lisinopril, fat guy medicine on the black market.
It does seem nuts. Like, what is the point of that?
I don't know. The point is I go into the office so then they can charge me more and then find all the other stuff they want to work on.
Well, yeah, but like...
And by the way, the last time I went to the place, and they said, okay, you have to come back, and we have to do all this massive blood work on you. So they had to take 18 vials of blood when I went back. I got the thing back that said I'm a clean bill of health. Really? My blood came back fine? If those blood tests came back with no indication that there's anything wrong with me, then blood tests don't work.
Okay. But, I mean, it's just incredible to me because it seems like going to the doctor it seems like drugs that, you know, improve your health, like keep you from literally dying from a stroke, that you should like decrease access barriers to those.
Yes.
Like that just seems like a basic, and like it's incredible to me like the urgent care won't prescribe them either. Why won't
they said they don't do that?
Why though?
Like no.
Why won't anywhere prescribe hypertension drug? Like, okay, like you said, like you can go to an online pharmacy in Canada or whatever and get somebody to like mail order send you ED drugs, but like why can you not get blood pressure medication?
I don't know, because I assume I don't know. I don't know why there's not a pile of 7,000 here, and I don't know why when I get them, Alice, it's 1 month at a time.
Because it's
just give me the bottle is 5 inches tall. It's 1/5 filled. Fill the goddamn bottle with the fat guy medicine and take money off the top. Do whatever you need. This should not be this hard. I am willing to pay. It's ridiculous. Somehow I went today to seek medical care and came back with less medical care than I had before I went there.
Right.
All right. So that's fine. Alice, on the other hand, a lot of you guys who listen to the radio show were worried because I had told them, Alice, and I'm sure I'm in trouble for this, that you were mad at me.
I was mad at you.
For today, for this experience.
I was.
Because I talked about it on the radio, the fact that you had you were going to your place, and I asked people, what should she say, somebody who hasn't been a cook really before, what should she say to people, and people came in and gave advice, and then Alice torched it and wrote me a long, very typical Alice Shattuck screed about how everything's ruined and how I'm a bastard and never listen to her.
Well, it's true. I don't necessarily like want to be a restaurant cook with my life's work. I'm doing it because of financial considerations, not because it's like my dream to be a restaurant cook.
This is something I found out about you too today.
What?
Okay, so and then you yelled at me and I ruined everything and you didn't want to do it, and so you went there, and how was the experience?
It was great.
Okay, so you had a wonderful time, and now would you say
it was great, and I liked the place, and now I'm gonna be a restaurant cook. But
I didn't see the follow-up apologizing email. It's funny, huh? I'll wait for that one.
You're still making me do it, and I still said
I'm not making you do anything else.
You are making me do this. You came up with this job, and you
I
sent
found
it
this
to
job,
me.
yes, because it's the St. Pauli girl job.
It's not,
which should be perfect for you, considering you're somebody who was just bragging about her breasts before we got on the air. Which
I was not.
Which, hang on, I'll have that audio at the end of the podcast. So listen after it's over. There's hidden audio.
No, don't record me without my consent, please.
No. That's the laws in this house are much different. Who also said earlier, do you think I looked too sexy for the interview? My goodness, Alice. Well, I assume, like most interviewers, he dove across the table at you. I mean, when you're dealing with this level of hotness, Alice, only you and a certain doctor have I ever seen this hot.
Stop.
You think I look too sexy in the interview?
No, I was just not sure. Like, that's...
I know I look really sexy, but do you think, is it possible for me to go overboard, Tom?
I just was wondering if it was, like, too much makeup since it's, like, in a kitchen, which is, like, the least, like, sexy job that...
What do you mean it's the least sexy job?
Working in a restaurant kitchen?
I don't know if that's true.
Well,
they don't have too many sexy sous chef outfits, I guess. They don't. Although there's a lot of very good-looking people in F&B.
But it's not like glamorous. So I wasn't sure if like the makeup level was too much or if the outfit was right or like. Well, it's not. I don't know, but like this is the top I wore. Like thoughts.
I don't know. Oh, you have thoughts on your excellent cleavage. End quote. I think that top looks great. That's what you wore on our first date. I think you look beautiful. Alice, this is when human beings say thank you. I deserve such comments. They don't warrant a thank you.
Well, just were being rude to me.
No, I was not. All right, we have to start the show at some point. I don't, so here's my feeling, is over the weekend, we saw a lot of people complaining about free speech and the news, and complaining about Fox News, complaining about this and that. The Biden administration, for the first time today, as I was sitting on my Revolutionary War torture surgical bed, as my wife was sawing away at my toe bone, it occurred.
Also in this outfit.
It occurred to me, yes.
If you want to picture that.
That was the only anesthesia I needed was the amount of sexiness. It was an overload. So thankfully, I was in the clouds. I didn't feel anything. My goodness.
Well,
should I wear this top, Tom, or do you think it shows too much of my magnificent breasts? Wow. At least your self-esteem is intact. Do I think you look too sexy?
That wasn't like a question. I didn't mean it like that.
Everybody else in the kitchen were twos, Tom.
That's not what I meant, and you know it. I meant, was it like the right vibe for the thing?
Use the word sexy.
I'm not used to being sexy, so I was wondering if it was
sounds like that.
Stop.
All right, Alice. So my feeling is this. Did you change the cleavage setting on your top? Like you said you were? I can't see the things covering me.
A little bit.
So my feeling is this. I'm actually, for the first time, I am now a little worried about the lack of answers the White House has. I actually think they don't know. They don't have any answers. I don't think. I think that instead of, they don't have a fix. They don't have a COVID fix. Obviously, we know that. They don't have an Afghanistan fix. We know that. They don't have a jobs numbers fix. We know that. They have no fixes for anything. Which is why, of course, they're making up these little narratives and making up little vignettes to talk about. And and worry about and spend time doing things for. It's like there is no fix. I'm fine with no more legislation. I don't care if roads and bridges all crumble tomorrow. I'm over it. Fine. But the idea, Alice, that there are thousands of container ships just hanging out in harbors, and that entire airlines have to be grounded, and the management is so afraid of it that they tell people with a straight face that it's the weather that affected only their planes and all of the other planes because of vaccine mandates, and that there are tens of thousands, I think actually hundreds of thousands, of servicemen and women who are unvaccinated, and they've got a deadline coming up.
Right. So, yeah, I think here's a big part of the problem is that things like the economy or air traffic or health and pandemics are really complicated and unpredictable. And the economy doesn't just turn off with a switch and then turn back on. You know, you can't, like, I say this to you sometimes about, like, even climate change, right? Like, it's so complicated. Like, even if you decide that, like, carbon in the atmosphere is causing all these effects, like, you can tilt the milk jug in one direction and have all the milk spill out of it onto the floor. But just because you tilt it back the other way doesn't make the milk fly up from the floor and go back into the milk jug. Some stuff doesn't unbreak if you just reverse the process that breaks it, you know? So they've really, really screwed up the economy. And not just Biden. Obviously, he wasn't there when the first breaking of the economy even happened. And pieces of the economy that are broken are, like, in China and stuff. You know, like, there are definitely things that are outside of the control of just our country. And the choices that were made that broke the economy were made by lots of little officials as well as the big officials in Washington, D.C. and Anthony Fauci and stuff, right? So, like, it was a lot of complicated causes, but the economy shut down for a long period of time, and it's not clear that anybody knows exactly how to turn it back on. And, like, certain things, like handing everybody a bunch of cash can, like, keep it on life support. But, like, there was an article I sent you today where people were saying, and this was, I think, was it Bloomberg? It was a major financial publication was saying, like, we should be worried that the United States is already actually in a recession right now. And we're just, it's stagflation. Like, the economy's stagnant, but we're inflating prices so much that we're, like, not fully seeing it yet. But that's like really dangerous, right? Like, that's when you really hurt your economy. So, like, I was having this conversation with someone the other day who was saying, like, oh no, like, the traveling economy is back because, like, car rentals are really expensive and hotel rooms are really expensive. And I was saying, but you don't know from the demand side as the consumer if those things are expensive because there's, like, a ton of demand and everything's back and it's normal, or because there are supply issues, whether in the labor supply in terms of, like, hotel rooms and hospitality, those are very, very dependent on the price of labor, or on you know, like, the used car supply. The car market is completely out of whack. That's accounting for a huge amount of the inflation right now. We also, what you're not seeing in any of the inflation numbers yet, really, is the housing costs, which, like, I mean, you and I know because we got approved for a mortgage for the lead stuff that valued our house at a certain amount of money, like, pegged right in the end of 2019, the beginning of 2020. So we know exactly what our house was worth, like, right before the pandemic. And it's now worth a lot more than that if we just went out to sell it. I mean, like, a lot more, you know, probably a 10 or 15% increase in a year or two, right? Like, and so that you don't see right away, because what the inflationary measures look for in terms of housing costs is the rental value of a place, which you don't necessarily see in the prices. Like, you know, and people continue to live in the same home, so people's rents go up. That hits inflation, but housing values don't hit inflation really, except as this sort of proxy thing that takes longer to show up, like the equivalent cost to rent, right? So This is not a good economy right now. Despite the spin that they're trying to put on it, and Marty Walsh goes out here whenever there's the jobs numbers looking terrible, and Joe Biden is telling us that, it's Trump's fault and he's recovering it or whatever. I mean, this is, there are now structural problems that may or may not be able to be resolved. Like, there might not be a fix for some of this stuff.
No, but also you said that the pandemic is not predictable. And maybe it's not, but your public policy can be predictable. So,
well, right, but
cutting the checks, we knew that would soften the job market.
Well, right. So cutting the checks does hurt the job market.
We
absolutely.
know that putting constraints, COVID constraints on places, affect these places, businesses, etc. So we knew that was going to happen.
But that being said, so yeah, there's going to be an impact when there's COVID constraints and stuff. But stuff isn't that cut and dried. Like, for example, the Biden vaccine mandate for businesses, for the one that's for businesses over 100 employees, that doesn't even exist yet. It's a press release right now. There's no policy. There's no OSHA policy. They haven't come out with it yet.
Well, there's no OSHA arm of enforcers of vaccines. OSHA doesn't deal with that. I mean,
but we're all acting like Joe Biden's acting like this mandate's out here, and it's not even out here. So there's not even any official government policy that you can point to that's even doing this, but companies are still reacting to the presidential press release and trying to do this stuff. This is what I mean when I say it's complex and unpredictable, right?
If they're non-compliant, they can be fined.
But they can't be fined right now.
Yeah, but that's why they're doing it, because they see it coming.
Right, but what I'm saying is, suppose Joe Biden never comes out with this policy, and then people say, well, the Biden vaccine mandates made XYZ happen with Southwest Airlines. Well, then they'll turn around and say, we never even came out with a mandate. We decided against it. It couldn't have been our vaccine mandate because we didn't have one. And I honestly think that's part of it, right? And it's the same with the pandemic stuff. Yeah, they shut stuff down and made it illegal to go out, but they also scared the bejesus out of people. And if they had just come out and said oh my God, you're all gonna get sick and die from going out and being in a store or a restaurant, do you think the restaurants wouldn't still have been hurt? Of course they would. Fewer people would have gone out to the restaurants. It would have hurt the businesses. It would have made some people stay home or not show up for work or collect welfare, whatever, right? And so there's stuff the government can do, these signaling things. They can send Fauci out here to say it's dangerous to go eat in a restaurant, and that affects the businesses as well, And the supply chain issues, same things, right? If Biden goes out and signals that he's going to start, use the Defense Production Act to start making certain factories make something else, then businesses are going to adjust accordingly. They're trying to predict what the government's going to do. So even the signals that they send have a big impact on the economy, which is what we're seeing right now with this vaccine mandate stuff. And that has a ripple effect. So this happens to affect Southwest a lot. I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing this is because, and we've known some stewardesses over the years.
Mm-hmm.
Southwest is famous among airlines because they are very, very strongly unionized. The employees are. So, for example, we used to know a flight attendant, who was
But aren't they all unionized?
No, because we used to know a flight attendant who I believe worked for JetBlue, but a different airline, and her whole thing was she was pro-union and she wanted them to unionize and all this stuff, and that was the example she always used. It's well, Southwest is the cheapest. It doesn't drive up their prices, and they're the most unionized, the most strongly unionized airline out of anybody.
Well, the flight attendants, this problem was pilots, wasn't it?
Well, this was pilots, but I assume it's everybody. We're also not
what
getting
it.
it. I'm
hearing
the pilots
are ex-military,
but their union though is the ones that are coming out with statements and stuff, and they can't. The union can't do an officially organized action, I guess. But because they've negotiated these really strong union benefits, Southwest Airlines has. They all have all this paid sick time and stuff, and if they are going to get fired on the vaccine date, then they're going to lose it. So they're all using all their sick time and stuff in
I did
advance.
not know
This is
this.
not
This
an
is
officially
fascinating.
organized strike because they can't like. But you know how like teachers like plan their work stoppages in advance and stuff, like, so this isn't an officially organized strike, but the union has been for a while now suing the airline over the vaccine mandate and all this stuff, the pilots union. But I don't know, I'd love to get a pilot on to talk about like how unionized the pilots are versus other pilots, but I know that like the flight attendants are very heavily unionized at Southwest.
Well, we know pilots.
But that's actually not the reason they're the cheapest airline. They're the cheapest airline because they worked out a deal with fuel ages ago where they have like a locked in price for fuel and they're cheaper than other airlines because of it. It's like a whole thing. But anyway, that's beside the point. But I do think it's interesting that they're like known in the industry for like being very highly unionized and that they're the ones that are having this happen. I also think it's interesting how much like people on the left are suddenly anti union and strike.
But, so this is my favorite thing. This is the
Mm-hmm.
CNN write-up of what happened. In a statement, the Federal Aviation Administration said there have been no air traffic-related cancellations since Friday. The agency, so not air traffic controllers,
Mm-hmm.
the agency said that airlines are experiencing delays because of aircraft and crews being out of place.
Yeah, out of place. So
What the hell does that mean, out of place?
it means they're not showing up for work. They're calling in sick.
Well, is this a new phrase?
So
The crews are out of place.
and this is a lot of flights. This
well,
is like more than
is
a
that
quarter.
anything like not there?
It's like not there. Yes, I would say it is.
Right. Well, let's use
So-
not there.
So, but it's like more than a quarter of their flights. It's like hundreds of new flights are getting canceled every day at Southwest, and you know, I don't know to like what extent. I don't know to what extent like the pilots actually aren't vaccinated or are vaccinated or whatever, but you know, it doesn't take that big a percentage of people not showing up for work to cause a lot of problems. And this is going to have a ripple effect because, you know, people are having to find other flights home and stuff, but Southwest is going to have to either credit these people or, you know,
Well, supposedly that's why they try to blame it on the weather.
right.
So they wouldn't have to refund.
Yeah, but I mean, it's clearly not that because other flights are going. And there was like also some brouhaha. People were saying it was like air traffic controllers in Jacksonville and like, so, but that's why part of why I didn't bring it up yesterday because it was still unclear kind of what was happening. And it was obvious that what we were being told about it was like full of untruth. So it wasn't entirely clear like what exactly the story was yesterday when we did our show. But yeah, I mean, it's the prevarication and stuff around the whole thing where they're sort of not telling the truth about what's going on. And I mean, same thing with other industries where people are being threatened with being fired and stuff, like teachers and public employees in New York. And, you know, it's, and you know, some of the employees that have a problem with getting vaccinated, like, have already had COVID. So, I mean, how do you show that those people are any risk to anybody around them? When...
And that's where this gets. That's where this gets more. You waiting to take a sip until the camera's off you?
No,
You are shameful.
I have been drinking on camera. Ask the people.
So that's where this is more dangerous because that makes you question now when they're saying that the vaccines give you more protection. You say, wait a second, are you just telling me that so that the people who have already gotten COVID will get vaccinated too? And in my mind, yes, without being a doctor.
Yeah, because that hasn't really been tested, and people seem to have good protection.
And that's another example of Fauci lying, which makes him a freaking liar.
I mean, you don't see a lot of people, like, just anecdotally, like, they are showing us a lot of breakthrough cases, like, you hear about them all the time, right? But, like, you're not seeing, a lot of people had COVID and recovered last year, and you're not just anecdotally, the newspapers aren't running any stories, and you would think they would be if they had them, of people who are like, oh my gosh, my second time having COVID, it's so bad. Get vaccinated even if you've had it before. Like, why wouldn't you show that story if you had people like that out there? I don't think people who've had COVID really get COVID again. But, I mean, like, I don't know anybody who's had COVID again a second time. Do you?
I know people who know people, yeah.
Really?
Yes.
I mean, I know people who've got
that's the thing.
vaccinated and got COVID. I don't know people who've had COVID twice. I would feel like the news would probably, like, report that if they could. But to, like, get people vaccinated more, but whatever. And I think they're going to run into problems too when they try and do this with kids. Like, we read that statistic from the Quinnipiac poll the other day that like 70% of parents, I think 68% of parents in the US, like, don't think it should be mandated for kids. That's going to run up against some problems in the next few months. It really, really is. I mean, because that probably includes a lot of parents who will get their own kids vaccinated, actually, but are not in favor of having it mandated. That's a lot of parents, I would say. But yeah, I don't know. So, but I think the bigger problem for the Biden administration is mandate or no mandate. If it was clear that this like had some benefit or was necessary or something, you know, like at the beginning of the pandemic, there were hospitals that had a lot of COVID patients. There were like images of the exhausted doctors and nurses and all the stuff, and people were overwhelmed. Like, it's much harder to justify at this point in time because that just doesn't exist anymore. You know, the March New York COVID is not here anymore. That level of infection and, you know, to a totally naive population that has no natural immunity whatsoever. And really, like, that's when the risk of the hospitals being overwhelmed and all that stuff, like, that's why we had the 2 weeks to slow the spread and all those things, right? Like, that's why that all existed. Now that's done. There's no risk of that anymore. Hospitals being overwhelmed is, like, not a thing that's happening anymore. I did read an interesting statistic. You know how we had been talking about that, like, Florida's vaccination rate wasn't actually that low? And so it was, like, weird that their death rate was high in this past wave of COVID, right? So as it turns out, a lot of people from Latin American countries were coming to Florida to get vaccinated and leave, but didn't actually live there. Oh. And that was being reflected in their vaccination numbers. So it's possible that the actual vaccination rate of the Florida population was actually not as high as it had been reported to be previously. Because just like the number of vaccines for the percent of the population isn't reflective of like who actually lives in Florida. But anyway, that was just a interesting tidbit I read today that I thought was fascinating. But
State Secretary Deb Haaland, who, as you know, is the Department of the Interior,
ran the marathon today.
Yes. She says, as I run today's Boston Marathon on Indigenous Peoples Day, I will carry with me my ancestors who gave me the ability to run. Did
you see the video of her wishing us a happy Indigenous Peoples Day,
says,
too?
She wrote this in the Globe. My feet will pound the ancestral homelands of the Massachusetts, the Mashpee, Wampanoag, and the Pawtucket people, and will follow in the footsteps of indigenous runners who have participated in the race over a 125-year history. I have no problem with any indigenous peoples whatsoever.
Except Deb Haaland?
I have a problem with people wearing and shouting their progressive spirit belief system at me at every time they can, especially at a time, if this is not illustrative of the problem, why nothing is getting fixed, why nobody is fixing anything, because this symbolism of pounding the feet where the Massachusetts were and in all through everything we do in equity, etc., is prioritized. We've got that person from Wakefield who's in the HHS or something because it's the first trans person. Great. Okay, we got all the firsts done. Are we sure everybody is the best at everything?
Well, yeah. I mean, like, you would think, for example, that your buddy there, Buttigieg, would be concerned about, like, the port situation with the ships not being able to come in since he's Mr. Transportation.
You would say that's a huge thing. As a matter of fact, Alice, I believe that could fall under infrastructure.
Yeah.
Many kinds. Truckers, trains, boats. That is a perfect example of combined infrastructure.
And ports affect all of us, whether or not, like, we own the port. So that's, like, a perfect example of something the government is supposed to run because they're everybody's ports. You know, the ports affect what can show up in your grocery store shelves, whether you live near the port or own a part of the port or what. What are you frowning at? Why am I concerned? What's wrong?
Along the way to running my first marathon, I began to think deeply about the story of my people who have used running not only to get places, but to preserve their traditions and culture. In the days of my ancestors, runners ran from house to house and village to village to spread news. In the high desert, runners kept watch for spring floods, alerting villagers and sprinting to the fields to capture water for that year's crops. Native American runners saved lives during the tragedies of colonization. Now, traditional foot races in Pueblo villages honor those. I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Does this seem like a bit of a stretch?
Well, yeah, and also I question the lumping together of all different indigenous people.
Exactly.
Isn't that like me claiming like Italian people as part of my heritage, even though I'm not like remotely Italian in any way whatsoever? Like, it's weird when you lump a bunch of different cultures that are like very disparate. Like, is she Wampanoag?
I don't want to. I have no comment on that.
I don't know. I think it's weird when we like lump all native cultures together because there's a bunch of different ones and they spend a lot of time killing each other too, by the way. What is her background? Let's find out. I mean, but she's from New Mexico, so I'm assuming that she's Pueblo. So the Pueblo people are really, really different from the Wampanoag people, aren't they? Isn't it, like, almost offensive to lump them together and say that she's somehow connected to the Wampanoag? To me, it kind of is. I don't know. Did you see her video message about Indigenous Peoples Day?
No.
I can send it to you, probably. But, yeah, I find the whole, like, Indigenous People Day thing odd. And, like, I guess, like, part of what's strange to me is that, like, it's an unrealistic, like, Disney-fied understanding of, like, different cultures. You know what I mean? It's like saying Italians are, like, about pizza and gondolas and stuff. It's just a weird, like, flattening thing that people do. And I understand that, like, part of that is just, like, we're all distanced from these cultures. Like, we're not participants in it anymore. So, you know, but it's just not real. You know what I mean? Like, Plains Indian culture is, like, so horse dependent. Horses weren't even introduced into the Americas until Columbus came. Like, this is also a syncretistic culture. You know what I mean?
Goodness, I don't have that word.
Okay, I just mean it's, like, multiple things combined. And I mean, like, I've said this before on this show, like, the Algonquin language that people spoke around here, that, like, that's preserved because missionaries came and translated a gospel into Algonquin. You know what I mean? Like, that's why we know what the language sounds like today and preserved it for people who are descended. It was a dead language until they pulled the Bible out.
But here's my thing.
Okay.
Is I'm just saying that taking a day off so that you can run the Boston Marathon and then writing an op-ed doesn't necessarily require you to make the stretch that running was a particularly Native American thing to do.
Well, I think, a lot of people ran before.
And yes, and what did and many people take to Native Americans when the Spanish brought horses?
Horseback.
The horses did the running.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying that almost every civilization
has had running.
Counted on running to alert the villages to escape colonization.
Well, that's why we have the marathon, isn't it? Because the ancient Greeks had running.
She
right?
She says, on this way, there were very few solely walking societies made it. You know? Nope, not going to walk, not going to run. But they're coming upon us, they're going to kill us. Nope. That's a principle I hold dearly. I'd never run. Those people didn't last. On this special day, she says, I will run for missing and murdered Indigenous peoples and their families. Can't just run down the street, okay? How about that? And the promise that our voices are being heard and that I'll have a part of an equitable and just future in this new era. God. Is there anything that wokeism can't F up? This is why Donald Trump is right. Everything woke turns to bleep, he says. Then she says, I will run for Tom Longboat, Tarzan Brown, Patty Dillon, because yada, 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 yada. It's part of this administration made a commitment to honor our country's promises to Indigenous communities. It's part of our Build Back Better agenda to embed equity and inclusion into everything that we do. Huh.
Hadn't noticed.
Across the administration, we are ensuring that tribal governments are...
Can you guys embed getting food to grocery store shelves as a part of everything you do? Because that would be really convenient. And, like, CNN had this article out that was like, if you're expecting the grocery stores to look like the before times with plentiful food, think again. Like, really? Don't tell me that. Maybe instead of worrying about the pounding of feet of the Wampanoag people, you should focus on getting ships to come into the country. And don't tell me you can walk and chew gum at the same time if we're looking at empty grocery store shelves. Because this is America, and we should not have to look at empty grocery store shelves. We're better than that at this point in time. I sent you Deb Holland's audio, by the way,
did you? Should I grab it?
Of her Indigenous Peoples Day message. But, yeah, here's the thing, like, that people act like you can do all the things. You know, whenever you say, like, is this what we should be focusing on? They go, like, well, can't we do both? You know, like, oh, well, if you say, like, why don't we focus on, like, fatherlessness and education in underserved communities in the cities, then they say, like, well, but we can focus on that and also talk about police shooting black people. Like, okay, well, but I don't really see you doing anything about the actual problem that's actually killing way more people, you know? And it's the same stuff with this, like, woke junk. It's like, yeah, we're embedding equity in everything we do, but but it's part of our Build Back Better agenda. Well, I don't see you getting any Build Back Better agenda passed. So if you're worried about bridges, pass some bridge stuff.
Well,
if you're worried about ports, pass some port stuff. Because it doesn't seem like you can get both done. So maybe you should worry about the stuff that's actually important first. Because, this is real life. Everything is limited. You can't do all the things.
She finishes. To this goes against what you're saying. They don't want to do ports. She says, I'm proud to be part of an administration that recognizes and trusts that my life experiences can inform policymaking in an effort to correct the mistakes of the past and help create a future for our ancestors that our ancestors would be proud of. Stay safe, runners, and happy Indigenous Peoples Day.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Maybe guys just try and run an administration that's not one massive screw up after another. Maybe try that.
Maybe we shouldn't hire people who just hate America as constituted.
Yeah, America was going pretty well pre-pandemic.
Right.
I hate to say it.
Right. Maybe if there's a sign on the side of the road that talks about the Ordways shooting an Indian, we can just leave it alone because maybe 2021 is not the time to...
Are you going to read that to our people?
No, I don't want to. It's just somebody in our town wants to get rid of a sign that talks about...
Somebody killed an Indian once in the history of our town. Somebody killed an Indian, and there's a sign about it, and they have a problem. So.
Yes. So, okay. So that is where we are. I'm now mad and angry. And
Sorry.
No,
life is good. Listen to Deb Holland's message.
Okay.
There's no swears in it. There's no swears, and she's wishing you a happy Indigenous Peoples Day.
Where are you, Deb? I just had it open. Hold on, I gotta move. I have to open these things in different browsers. All right, here we go.
Guwatsi Haupa. Happy Indigenous Peoples Day, everyone. Today we celebrate the rich traditions, diverse cultures, and resilience of Indigenous communities. I'm incredibly proud to honor the first stewards of this land, the Indigenous people who survived through periods of brutal colonization and eventually forced assimilation policies.
There were forced assimilation policies, and there were voluntary assimilation policies. Many Indians took advantage of those. They liked creature comforts, and they were happy to do it. And you can have the first of all, assimilation. If you want to talk about the entire experience, assimilation was the way to go. I hate to tell you, because the realities on reservations are not awesome in a lot of places.
Well, right, and many of the political problems that you continue to hear Native American activists talk about on reservations have to do with things that are available because of assimilation. You know, like access to capital, access to healthcare, access to like police resources. I mean, like, how do you think missing and murdered Indigenous women get found and justice gets served for them? It's access to things that are available through assimilation, like police forces and the justice system, right?
Right.
So that's, I mean, it's the lack of access to those things that's causing many of the problems that are on reservations, at least judging by the things that people on reservations say they care about and are worried about. To me, they seem like problems that would be solved by more civilization and not less, but what do I know? But anyway, so I wanted to just throw it out there because I think it's interesting that like how fast stuff has changed, because now it's like pretty much unquestionable that Columbus was like evil, and why are we still celebrating this guy, right? And like, I mean, to the point where like sometimes you wonder if you're crazy, like, well, maybe he wasn't that good, like maybe it's, you know, because all these people are like saying he was so bad and like bringing up all these examples. Here's 2015, so this is like directly before Trump. Here's Obama's message for Columbus Day. Over half a millennium ago, Christopher Columbus, an ambitious navigator native to Genoa, Italy, set sail for new horizons aboard the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. His expedition went west for a months-long journey. Though his first of 4 voyages across the Atlantic did not end at his desired destination of Asia, Columbus's adventure reflected the insatiable thirst for exploration that continues to drive us as a people. Columbus's legacy is embodied in the spirit of our nation. Determined and curious, the young explorer persevered after having been doubted by many of his potential patrons. Once opportunity struck when Ferdinand II and Isabella I agreed to sponsor his trip, he seized the moment and pursued what he knew to be possible. Columbus's arrival in the New World inspired many and allowed for generations of Italians to follow, people whose Italian-American heritage contributes in immeasurable ways to making our country what it is, and who continue to help strengthen the friendship between the United States and Italy. Yada, yada, yada. Then he talks about, like, how, yeah, we did hurt Native people, but in the years since Columbus's time, the legacy of early explorers is carried on in the wide eyes of aspiring young dreamers and doers, eager to make their own journeys and to continue reaching for the unknown and unlocking new potential. In commemoration of Christopher Columbus's historic voyage 523 years ago, Congress by joint resolution, etc., and he declares, like, Columbus Day, right? So it's crazy, like, how far we've come, because Biden obviously couldn't put out that statement now, 6 years later. Could Biden put out a statement like that?
I don't know. I think he put out a statement. I'm not sure what it says, but I'm sure he put out sort of there's no way the White House didn't put out a statement.
But was it about Indigenous people or was it about Columbus?
I don't know. I know that he did put out a statement, but I don't know what it said. But I don't know. Maybe it's something a little more boilerplate. Maybe not. But the fact that this is prioritized is...
This is Biden's.
Okay.
More than 500 years ago, after securing the support of Isabella and Ferdinand, Christopher Columbus launched the Nina and the Pinta. While he intended to end his quest in Asia, he instead landed on the shores of the Bahamas. Many Italians would follow his life. Today, millions of Italian Americans enrich our country's traditions and culture. Today, we also acknowledge the painful history of wrongs and atrocities that many European explorers inflicted on tribal nations and indigenous communities. So, yeah, there was nothing here, like, unequivocally positive about Columbus or how he contributed to our lives today.
Right.
There's Italian Americans. And both Biden and Obama did mention Indigenous people, but I would say that the focus has shifted in the last 6 years.
My goodness.
Well, thank you so much, everyone. As always, you can find us on Twitter at BurnBarrelPod. We're at Facebook.com/BurnBarrelPodcast. We are also at burnbarrelpodcast.com, and you can email us at burnbarrelpodcast@gmail.com. We're on Gab. We're on Parler. We're at BurnBarrelPodcast on there. We're also on YouTube. Subscribe on there and on Rumble in case the YouTube goes away and all the other things. So thank you so much, everyone.
And I have a Substack coming out very soon, I promise. I'm sorry, I was in the ER today, as you know.